Hey everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
My name is Maya Chin, and my older sister Jennifer has spent the last 6 years telling everyone I'm a failure. The irony is that without me she wouldn't have a company to run. Jennifer is everything my parents wanted in a daughter. Ambitious. Charismatic. Stanford MBA. At 36 she's the CEO of Chin Industries, a sustainable packaging company she claims to have built from scratch. She appears on panels about female entrepreneurship. She's been featured in Forbes. She drives a Range Rover and lives in a 4-bedroom house in Palo Alto. I'm 33, drive a 10-year-old Subaru, and live in what my family assumes is a modest apartment in San Francisco. I work remotely doing what Jennifer calls freelance consulting work. She's never asked for specifics. What my family doesn't know is that I'm a principal at Redwood Capital Partners, one of Silicon Valley's most selective private equity firms. I specialize in sustainability-focused growth companies. My portfolio is worth $280 million. And in 2019, when Jennifer's company was failing and no serious investor would touch it, I saved her. Not as her sister Maya, but through an offshore trust called Pacific Growth Holdings. I contributed $4.7 million in Series B funding. I took 40% equity. I structured it to remain completely anonymous. And for 6 years, I've watched Jennifer build her reputation as a self-made CEO while simultaneously using me as her cautionary tale. The sister who never achieved anything. I wasn't hiding out of fear. I was documenting, testing, waiting, because I knew eventually Jennifer's ego would demand proof of my inadequacy. And at Christmas dinner 2025, surrounded by our entire family, she decided to provide that proof with a private investigator's report. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 years. We grew up in Cupertino, California. Our parents, David and Susan Chin, immigrated from Taiwan in the 1980s. They built a successful medical device company. They had high expectations. Jennifer met them effortlessly. I didn't. Jennifer was the golden child from birth. Valedictorian. Perfect SAT scores. She played piano at Carnegie Hall at 16. She got early admission to Stanford. She made our parents proud just by existing. I was different. Quieter. More analytical. I got into UC Berkeley, which was fine but not Stanford. I majored in finance and economics. I was excellent at what I did, but I didn't have Jennifer's presence. At family dinners, Jennifer commanded attention. I listened from the sidelines. After college, Jennifer got her MBA at Stanford. I went to work for a boutique investment firm in San Francisco. Jennifer networked at tech events. I analyzed financial models in quiet conference rooms. By 2018, Jennifer had launched Chin Industries with our parents' blessing and their initial capital. Her mission: revolutionize sustainable packaging using biodegradable materials. It was ambitious. It was timely. It was also financially unstable. Jennifer was brilliant at marketing and vision. She was terrible at operations and finance. By mid-2019, Chin Industries was burning cash. The technology worked, but the unit economics didn't. They needed $5 million in Series B funding to scale production and reach profitability. Jennifer pitched every major sustainability investor in the Bay Area. They all passed. Too capital intensive. Too long to profitability. Unproven market. But I saw what they didn't. The technology was legitimate. The market was shifting toward sustainable packaging. The timing would be perfect in 18 months. If Jennifer could survive that long, the company would be worth $50 to $100 million. There was just one problem: Jennifer's attitude toward me. At Thanksgiving 2018, I'd mentioned I was analyzing a sustainable packaging company for my firm. I suggested Jennifer look at similar operational models. She'd smiled patronizingly. Maya, I appreciate the thought, but I'm building something at a completely different level than what you analyze. Your firm handles small-scale stuff. This is serious venture capital territory. Mom had nodded. Dad had changed the subject. That night I made a decision. I would save Jennifer's company anonymously. I'd provide the capital she desperately needed. Not because she deserved it, but because the business fundamentals were sound and I'd make significant returns. But I would never tell her. I'd let her believe she'd secured funding from a major Silicon Valley investor. I'd watch her take credit for the turnaround. I'd document every dismissive comment, every condescending remark, every time she used my career as evidence of mediocrity. And when the moment came, I'd show her exactly who she'd been standing on. In January 2019, I established Pacific Growth Holdings through an offshore trust in the Cayman Islands. The structure was impenetrable. Multiple holding companies, registered through a law firm in New York, managed through trustees in Delaware. No connection to me. I approached Chin Industries through official channels, offering $4.7 million in Series B funding. The terms were standard: 40% equity, board observer rights, liquidation preferences. I had another partner at Redwood handle the communication. Jennifer never knew I was involved. She announced the funding round at Chinese New Year 2019. I closed a major Series B from a top-tier Silicon Valley investor, she'd said, beaming. They saw the vision when others couldn't. Dad had toasted her success. Mom had cried with joy. Our extended family had applauded. I'd smiled and said, "That's wonderful, Jennifer. Congratulations." Nobody asked about my work. Over the next 6 years, Chin Industries grew exactly as I'd projected. The market shifted. Sustainable packaging became mandatory for major retailers. By 2024, the company was valued at $68 million. Jennifer appeared on 40 Under 40 sustainability leaders. She keynoted at environmental conferences. She bought the house in Palo Alto. At every family gathering, she'd reference her success. And at every family gathering, she'd make comments about my career. Maya's still doing her consulting work. Very flexible schedule. Have you thought about getting a corporate position? Something with stability. If you ever want to learn about real business operations, you could shadow someone at my company. I always smiled. I never corrected her. I took detailed notes. Meanwhile, my career flourished invisibly. By 2024, I was a principal at Redwood Capital Partners. My personal portfolio exceeded $280 million. I'd been featured in Private Equity Quarterly. I'd spoken at Harvard Business School. But I drove my Subaru to family dinners. I wore normal clothes. I let them believe whatever narrative made them comfortable. I was building something more valuable than reputation. I was building a perfect case study in assumptions. Thanksgiving 2025 changed everything. Jennifer had just closed a major contract with Whole Foods. Chin Industries was projecting $45 million in revenue for 2026. She was in discussions with potential acquirers. Exit could happen within a year. She arrived at my parents' house in Los Gatos in her Range Rover, wearing designer clothes. I arrived in my Subaru wearing jeans from Gap. The family gathered in the living room. Jennifer held court, describing the Whole Foods deal, name-dropping executives, discussing acquisition multiples. Then my aunt asked, "Maya, how's your consulting work?" Before I could respond, Jennifer interrupted. "Maya's doing fine. She's found her niche. Small projects. Flexible hours. It suits her personality." She smiled in that way that seemed kind but wasn't. Not everyone needs to build empires. Some people are happier with simpler careers. Mom nodded sympathetically. Dad looked proud of Jennifer. I smiled. Everyone has their path. Then Jennifer's expression shifted. She set down her wine glass. "Actually, I need to address something." She looked at our parents. "I've been concerned about Maya for a while. She's been vague about her work. She claims she's successful, but I never see evidence. No office. No team. No clients she can name." Mom frowned. "Maya, what exactly do you do?" "I work for Redwood Capital Partners," I said evenly. "I've been there for 8 years." "Doing what specifically?" Jennifer pressed. "Because I've asked people in private equity. Nobody knows who you are. I maintain a low profile." "Or maybe there's nothing to profile," Jennifer said. Her voice had an edge now. "Maybe you've been exaggerating your role. Maybe you're embarrassed about your actual situation, so you've been misleading the family." The room went quiet. Dad leaned forward. "That's a serious accusation, Jennifer." "I know," Jennifer said. "That's why I'm handling it properly." She pulled out her phone. "I've hired a private investigator. Rebecca Morrison. Former SEC investigator. Top credentials." My pulse didn't change. I'd been expecting this. I'm having her conduct a complete financial and professional background check, Jennifer continued. At Christmas dinner, she'll present her findings to the entire family. We'll finally know the truth about Maya's career. Mom looked worried. Dad looked intrigued. My aunt looked uncomfortable. Jennifer looked at me. Unless you want to come clean now? Admit you've been exaggerating. I looked at her and smiled. I have nothing to hide. Christmas dinner sounds perfect. Jennifer smiled triumphantly. Wonderful. The whole family. Complete transparency. I nodded. I'm looking forward to it. What Jennifer didn't understand was that Rebecca Morrison was thorough. Former SEC investigators don't do surface-level checks. When you hire the best financial investigator in the Bay Area to examine someone's life, they follow every trail, including offshore trusts that invested in family members' companies. I left Thanksgiving and drove to my apartment. Not the modest place my family imagined. The 2,800 square foot loft in Soma that I'd bought for cash in 2022. I poured tea and opened my laptop. I'd known this moment would eventually arrive. Jennifer's need to prove her superiority wouldn't allow my perceived mediocrity to exist without verification. She needed evidence that she was the successful sister and I was the cautionary tale. I'd been ready for 6 years. I opened my secure files. Everything was documented. The Pacific Growth Holdings Trust formation. The $4.7 million investment in Chin Industries. The equity agreements showing my 40% ownership. The board observer reports I'd received quarterly since 2019. The current valuation showing Chin Industries at $68 million, meaning my stake was worth approximately $27.2 million. I had recordings of every family gathering where Jennifer dismissed my career. I had emails where she'd offered to let me shadow someone at her company. I had text messages where she'd suggested I needed career guidance. The company I owned 40% of. The company that existed because I'd funded it. I also had something else. As board observer, I'd reviewed Chin Industries' financials quarterly. I'd noticed concerning patterns. Not fraud but aggressive practices. Revenue recognized before delivery. Expenses deferred to inflate quarterly results. Customer contracts structured to maximize reported ARR. Jennifer was preparing for acquisition. She was making the numbers look better than they were. Nothing illegal but aggressive enough to concern sophisticated buyers. I documented everything. Not maliciously but as proper due diligence. Now sitting in my loft I made a decision. If Jennifer wanted a complete investigation she'd get one. But Rebecca Morrison was thorough. When she investigated me she'd trace my financial holdings. She'd find Pacific Growth Holdings. She'd connect it to Chin Industries. And when she did, her SEC training would require her to examine that investment relationship. Which meant examining Chin Industries' books. Which meant finding the aggressive accounting. I didn't need to do anything except prepare. I drafted an email to my attorney at Redwood Capital. Subject line: Dissolution of Pacific Growth Holdings position in Chin Industries. I didn't send it. Not yet. But I had it ready. Christmas 2025. My parents' house in Los Gatos. Extended family. 21 people in the formal dining room. Jennifer had insisted on a full family dinner before the presentation. She wanted maximum audience. She wanted my humiliation to be complete. I arrived at 6 p.m. wearing a simple sweater and slacks. Jennifer was already there in designer clothing, holding champagne, standing beside a professional-looking woman in her 40s carrying a tablet and portfolio. Rebecca Morrison. The investigator. Jennifer saw me and smiled widely. Why, everyone's here. This is Rebecca Morrison. She's completed her investigation into your background. She'll present after dinner. I smiled. Hello, Ms. Morrison. Thank you for your thoroughness. Rebecca nodded professionally. Her expression was carefully neutral. Almost too neutral. We sat for dinner. Prime rib. My mother's dumplings. Wine. Conversation flowed around me. Cousins discussing jobs, uncles debating tech stocks, aunts talking about vacation plans. Jennifer kept glancing at me, expecting nervousness. I ate calmly, asked my cousin about his new startup, complimented my mother's cooking. At 8:15 p.m. after dessert, Jennifer stood. Everyone, attention please. The room quieted. As most of you know, I've had concerns about Maya's career claims. I hired Rebecca Morrison, a former SEC investigator, to conduct a comprehensive background check. Rebecca, please share what you found. Rebecca stood, opening her tablet. Her expression was still neutral, but I noticed tension in her shoulders. Thank you, Jennifer, Rebecca said. Her voice was measured. This investigation was more extensive than initially anticipated. Jennifer smiled. Because she's been lying. Not exactly, Rebecca said quietly. The room went very still. Rebecca looked at her notes. I was hired to investigate Maya Chen's professional history and financial status. I conducted a thorough examination. What I found was... She paused. Unexpected. I opened my laptop calmly. I typed an email to my attorney. Dissolve partnership in Chen Industries immediately. Begin liquidation process for Pacific Growth Holdings. Effective tomorrow. I hit send. Rebecca continued. Maya Chen is a principal at Redwood Capital Partners, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious private equity firms. She manages a portfolio currently valued at approximately $280 million. She's been with the firm for 8 years with an exceptional performance record. Jennifer's smile froze. She's been featured in Private Equity Quarterly and has spoken at Harvard Business School and Wharton. Her professional credentials are impeccable. Dad's eyes widened. Then why hasn't she mentioned this? I can't answer that, Rebecca said. But there's more. She pulled up something on her tablet. During my investigation, I traced Maya's financial holdings and investment structures. She owns property in San Francisco valued at $3.1 million. She has investment accounts totaling approximately $12.4 million. And she's the beneficial owner of an offshore trust called Pacific Growth Holdings. Jennifer frowned. What's Pacific Growth Holdings? Rebecca looked uncomfortable now. This is where the investigation became complicated. Pacific Growth Holdings is an offshore trust established in 2019. It made a significant investment in Series B funding. She paused. For Chen Industries. The room erupted. What? Jennifer stood abruptly. Maya invested in your company? Mom stared at me. Rebecca nodded. According to the equity agreements and trust documents I obtained, Pacific Growth Holdings, controlled by Maya Chen, contributed $4.7 million in Series B funding in 2019. In exchange, the trust received 40% equity in Chen Industries. Jennifer's face went pale. That's impossible. My Series B investor is a major Silicon Valley fund. They're an offshore trust registered in the Cayman Islands, structured through holding companies in Delaware, managed through a New York law firm, Rebecca said. The beneficial owner is your sister. Mom's hand went to her mouth. My aunt gasped. I took a sip of tea and waited. Jennifer stared at me. You've been my investor this entire time? Yes. For 6 years. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I set down my teacup. You never asked. You assumed I was unsuccessful. You offered to let me shadow people at your company. At the company I funded. I smiled. I wanted to see how long you'd build your reputation on my capital while treating me like I had nothing to offer. The room was completely silent. Rebecca cleared her throat. There's something else I need to disclose. Jennifer turned to her. What else? Rebecca's expression was grim. As a former SEC investigator, when I discovered Maya's investment in Chen Industries, I was required to examine the company's financial practices as part of standard due diligence. And Jennifer's voice was tight. I found concerning patterns. Aggressive revenue recognition. Deferred expenses. Contract structures that inflate annual recurring revenue. Nothing technically illegal, but aggressive enough that any sophisticated acquirer would flag it immediately during due diligence. Jennifer went white. You can't. I already reported my findings to your current investors, Rebecca said. Professional obligation. Your lead Series C investor, Summit Ventures, received my preliminary report this afternoon. They've called an emergency board meeting for December 27th. My phone buzzed. Email from Summit Ventures Managing Director. Maya, we need to discuss Chen Industries immediately. Call me tonight. I looked at Jennifer. Your lead investor is emailing me. During Christmas dinner. Jennifer's hands were shaking. Maya, you can't pull your funding. The company needs. Needed, I corrected. Past tense. I sent the dissolution order 4 minutes ago. My attorney files the paperwork tomorrow morning. Dad stood. Maya, this is Jennifer's company. Her career. You can't just. I can, I said calmly. I own 40% equity with standard liquidation rights. And after 6 years of being your cautionary tale while funding your golden child's success, I think I've been patient enough. Mom looked at Jennifer. Is what Rebecca said true? About the accounting practices? Jennifer didn't answer. Rebecca spoke quietly. The practices aren't illegal, but they're aggressive. Revenue recognized before shipment. Expenses pushed to future quarters. Any serious acquirer will find these during due diligence. Combined with the sudden withdrawal of 40% equity. She trailed off. The acquisition collapses, I finished. The Series C investors panic. The valuation drops. Jennifer sat down heavily. She looked like she might be sick. My uncle spoke up. Maya, be reasonable. She's your sister. I looked at him. She hired an investigator to publicly prove I'm a failure at Christmas dinner. She spent 6 years using me as evidence that she's the successful one. She built her entire reputation on capital I provided while treating me like I contribute nothing. I smiled. I think I'm being extremely reasonable. I could have exposed this years ago. I waited. My aunt looked at Jennifer. Why would you do this? Investigate your own sister. Jennifer didn't answer. She was staring at the table. My phone buzzed again. Chin Industries CFO. Maya, Summit is threatening to pull Series C. They found irregularities. We need to talk now. I showed the screen to Jennifer. Your CFO is panicking. Jennifer looked up. For the first time in 6 years, I saw something other than condescension. Maya, please, she whispered. Don't do this. Why not? Because we're family. I stood, closing my laptop. We're family when you need my money, Jennifer. But when you thought I was nobody, I wasn't worth listening to. When you thought I was mediocre, I was worth pitying. For 6 years, you used me as proof of your superiority. I picked up my coat. Now you know the truth. Your Series B investor was the sister you dismissed. Your company exists because of capital from the person you hired an investigator to humiliate. And that investigation just destroyed everything you built. I walked to the door. Jennifer stood. Where are you going? I have calls to make. Summit Ventures wants to discuss your company's future. Your CFO needs guidance on liquidation. And I have other portfolio companies that actually value my investment. I paused. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas, Jennifer. The next few weeks will be challenging. I left. Behind me I heard chaos. Mom crying. Dad demanding answers. Family members arguing. And Jennifer silent, realizing the investigator she'd hired to expose my failures had instead revealed her success was built entirely on my foundation. The next week moved with brutal efficiency. December 26th, Summit Ventures called an emergency board meeting. Rebecca Morrison's report triggered a comprehensive audit. They found everything I'd documented. Aggressive revenue recognition, manipulated quarterly results, contract structures designed to inflate metrics. Not fraud, but concerning enough to derail acquisition talks. The potential acquirer walked away December 27th. December 28th, I received formal notice from Chin Industries board. They requested I reconsider the liquidation. They offered increased equity, board seat, restructured terms. I declined all offers. December 29th, Summit Ventures demanded corrective action. Without stable Series B investor, without acquisition prospects, without clean accounting, Chin Industries' valuation collapsed. From $68 million to approximately $38 million in 1 week. Jennifer's equity, once worth approximately $19 million, was now worth about $11 million. And falling. My phone rang constantly. Jennifer called 23 times. I didn't answer. My parents called, begging me to reconsider. I politely declined. My aunt called asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine. Jennifer finally reached me December 30th by coming to my building. Security called from the lobby. There's a Jennifer Chin here, Ms. Chin. Should I send her up? I considered. Yes. 5 minutes later, Jennifer knocked. I opened the door. She looked awful. No makeup. Sweatshirt and jeans. Exhausted. You live here, she said quietly, looking at my loft. For 3 years. Can I come in? I stepped aside. Jennifer walked through my living room, taking in the modern furniture, the art, the floor-to-ceiling windows with bay views. The home she never knew existed. How long have you been this successful? She asked. Since before I invested in your company. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. You assumed I was struggling. I let you believe it. Jennifer sat on my couch. The company's collapsing. Summit is threatening to pull Series C. The acquisition is dead. My COO resigned yesterday. I know. Maya, you're destroying everything I built. I sat across from her. No, Jennifer. I'm withdrawing investment from a company I funded. There's a difference. It's my company. Built with my money. Valued because of my capital. Successful because the business model I analyzed was sound. I leaned forward. You took credit for everything while dismissing the person who made it possible. That's not building. That's performing. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. So this is revenge. Because I hurt your feelings. No. This is consequences. You hired an investigator to publicly prove I'm a failure at Christmas dinner. You spent 6 years using me as your cautionary tale. You made me evidence of your superiority. I paused. You got exactly what you asked for. Truth. You just didn't like what the truth revealed. I'm your sister. And you treated me like I was worthless. For 6 years. Jennifer was quiet. Then, what do you want? Nothing from you. There must be something. Some way to fix this. There is one thing. Name it. I want you to understand what you did. You built your identity on being the successful sister. You did it standing on a foundation I provided while pretending I contributed nothing. You hired an investigator to prove I was lying, and instead proved you were built on my capital. Jennifer looked at the floor. I gave you $4.7 million when no legitimate investor would touch your company, I continued. I structured it anonymously because I knew you couldn't handle success coming from your unsuccessful sister. I watched you build your reputation while treating me like I had nothing to offer. And when you decided to destroy me to prove your superiority, you hired someone who revealed everything. I stood. That's not revenge, Jennifer. That's irony. Jennifer looked up. Can the company survive? Maybe. Clean up the accounting immediately. Hire a credible CFO. Be transparent with remaining investors. Rebuild from scratch. Will you stay invested? No. Why not? Because I don't invest in people who treat others as inferior. It's bad business. I walked to the door. You can save your company, Jennifer. You're capable. But you'll do it without my capital and without the safety net you didn't know you had. Jennifer stood slowly. What do I tell Mom and Dad? Tell them the truth. Tell them their successful daughter built her company on their unsuccessful daughter's money. Tell them the investigation they supported destroyed what I created. I opened the door. Jennifer walked out, then turned. I'm sorry. For what specifically? She thought. For not seeing who you really are. That's a start. She left. I closed the door and walked to my windows, looking out over San Francisco. My phone buzzed. Summit Ventures wanted to discuss a new opportunity. Clean energy startup. Series B. $8 million needed. I opened my laptop and began my analysis. Epilogue, 8 months later. August 2026. Chin Industries survived barely. Jennifer cleaned up the accounting, brought in a respected CFO, restructured with her remaining investors. The valuation stabilized around $42 million. Not the exit she'd imagined, but operational. She sold the Range Rover. Downsized to a smaller house. Learned to run a company without the cushion she never knew she had. We're not close. But we're not enemies. At Dad's birthday in July, Jennifer introduced me to her new board member as my sister Maya, who's a principal at Redwood Capital Partners. Not my sister who does consulting. Not my sister with the flexible schedule. My actual title. It was small, but it meant something. My parents still don't fully understand what happened. They know I invested in Jennifer's company. They know I'm successful. But the depth, The 6 years of documentation, the strategic patience, the deliberate invisibility. That's beyond them. That's fine. I didn't do this for their understanding. I did it to answer a question. What happens when you fund someone's success while letting them believe you're a failure? Answer: they become the thing they accuse you of being. Jennifer called me unsuccessful while building success with my capital. He called me vague while being vague about where her funding came from. She called me embarrassing while her company existed because I saved it. The investigator she hired didn't expose my lies. She exposed Jennifer's entire foundation. And sometimes that's what justice looks like. I still drive my Subaru to family dinners. I still wear normal clothes. I still let people make assumptions. But I also have a loft in Soma, a portfolio worth $280 million, and the satisfaction of knowing that when my family decided to investigate my worth, they discovered I'd been holding up their golden child the entire time. I wasn't hiding. I was just waiting to see how long it would take them to notice. Turns out, 6 years and one investigator. Worth every second,